In the winter of 1922, deep in the remote countryside of Black Hollow, a lonely farm stood on the outskirts of a small village. The farm, known as Whitmore Homestead, belonged to Albert and Margaret Whitmore, an aging couple who lived there with their widowed daughter Eleanor, her 2 children, and their maid Clara, isolated from the rest of the world by the dense forests and the snow-covered fields. The family days were spent tending livestock, chopping firewood, and living the quiet, laborious life of a rural existence. But strange occurrences began to plague them. Albert, a stern and superstitious man, was the first to notice. Footsteps in the snow led from the woods to their home, but never away. At night, he heard whispers in the barn when no one was there. The cows grew restless, and their dogs growled at empty corners. Then, the footprints reappeared. Someone, or something, was circling the farm. One evening after dinner, Albert called his family together by the fireplace. They all looked nervous. "I've seen shadows moving in the barn," Albert murmured, his voice low. "There are footprints outside. Someone is watching us." The room fell silent, save for the wind howling beyond the thick wooden walls. Clara cleared her throat. I heard something last night. Heavy breathing outside my window." Eleanor flinched. "Father, we must tell the authorities. This is not normal." Albert shook his head. "He'll think us mad." He threw another log into the fire. "I'll check the barn tonight, see if there are any signs of any trespassers." The night was bitterly cold when Albert stepped into the snow with a lantern in his hand. The farm was eerily silent, except for the occasional creak of ice-laden branches. His breath curled in the air as he entered the barn, the smell of hay and animals thick in his nostrils. Then, a noise, a soft shuffle from the hayloft above. Albert turned his lantern upward, the flickering light barely piercing the shadows. "Who's there?" he barked. Silence. Then, a whisper. It came from everywhere and nowhere, curling around him like unseen fingers. "You should not be here," it sighed. Albert's blood turned to ice. The lantern flickered wildly. Then something moved. A shadow detached itself from the darkness above. Albert stumbled back, crashing into a wooden post. The cows stirred uneasily, their eyes reflecting the dim light. His heart pounded as he stared into the blackness. Then, the lantern flame steadied. Nothing was there. Shaken, he hurried back inside, bolting the doors behind him. He said nothing to his family that night, but he did not sleep. The next morning, the family awoke to find the back door wide open, snow drifting across the floor. Strange symbols had been etched into the frost-covered glass of windows, spirals, jagged lines, something that looked like an eye. Clara wanted to leave. "I don't feel safe here," she whispered to Eleanor, as if something in the house was with us, even when we're alone. That evening, they locked the doors and windows tightly. The children were put to bed early, and the family sat together in an uneasy silence. The air was thick with an unspoken fear. Then, the sounds began. Soft at first, the rustle of hay, the scrape of wood against wood. Then, a knock. Not at the door. From inside the walls. Eleanor clutched her mother's hand. Clara whimpered. Another knock, this time from above, the attic. Albert stood, gripping the fireplace poker. "Enough of this madness," he roared. He stomped toward the attic ladder, but before he could climb, something heavy thudded above, shaking the ceiling. A breathless silence followed. Then, a laughter, soft, dry, inhuman. Clara screamed. Albert dropped the poker and bolted the attic door shut, driving nails into the wood. "No one is going up there," he ordered. It didn't matter, because that night, something came down. The horror unfolded swiftly. First, the barn door creaked open on its own. The animals shrieked in terror. Then, footsteps, soft, deliberate, inhumanely slow, crossed the wooden floors of the farmhouse. And finally, the breathing. Low, wet, right outside their bedroom doors. And then, nothing. Silence. By morning, the farm was deathly still. The Whitmore family never emerged from their home again. Days later, villagers curious about their absence arrived at the farm. They knocked. No answer. They forced the door open. Inside, they found the bodies. Albert, Margaret, Eleanor, Clara, and the children, all brutally murdered, their skulls crushed. The bodies had been stacked neatly in the barn, covered with hay. The youngest child, Elizabeth, had clumps of her own hair in her tiny fist, as if she had torn it out in terror before she died. The house was undisturbed. Food had been eaten. The fire had been kept burning. Whoever had done this had stayed, watched, and lived among the dead. And in the attic, where the boards were torn apart, a single set of footprints led to the hole in the roof, disappearing into the endless wet expanse of the black, hollow forest. For years, the villagers avoided the Whitmore Homestead. Rumors of the strange lights flickering in the windows at night spread through Black Hollow. Hunters who ventured near reported hearing whispers in the wind, laughter carried among the trees, and then, sometimes, soft footsteps crunching in the snow, though no one was ever seen. In 1947, a group of university students set out to investigate the property. Armed with notebooks and cameras, they camped near the house for a night. By morning, only one remained. A young woman found wandering the woods, her clothes torn, her eyes wide with terror. She spoke of a presence in the attic, of shadows moving with a mind of their own, of something unseen breathing just behind her shoulder. She never spoke again. The Whitmore Homestead still stands, rotting and abandoned. No one dares tear it down for fear of what might be released. The attic door, still bolted shut, remains untouched. And some nights, if you stand in the clearing and listen closely, you might hear it. A whisper, a laugh, an invitation. Step inside if you dare.